Welcome to the Dietitian Side Hustle podcast. My name is Katie Dodd, and I'm a nutrition entrepreneur. I spent 7 years as a side hustler before diving into entrepreneurship full time. Before making the leap, I was bringing in 6 figures through my side hustle. If I can do it, you can too. This podcast is for dietitians, interns, and students who want to be inspired to start or perfect the side hustle of their dreams. Let's do this. Hello and welcome to the 165th episode of the Dietitian Side Hustle podcast, Now Money versus Later Money. Now, before I dive into today's discussion, I want to let everyone know who's listening to this episode relatively live that I am doing a free webinar called Blogging as a Business on September 6th, 2023. I want you all to go to blogfreebie.com to get registered. blogfreebie.com. And the wonderful thing about that link is when I do these webinars live, later on, I will try to make them on demand. So that way, regardless of when you're listening to this podcast episode, you can go catch the webinar. So blogfreebie.com, I would love to see you live. It's going to be an amazing webinar. If you've been there before, I have updated the webinar. I have a really exciting brand new offer that I'm going to be presenting at the end. So I would love to see each and every one of you there. So let's have this discussion about now money versus later money. Now, these are some terms that I've started using lately because when I talk about building a side hustle, when I talk about, building your own business, making money on the side, I'm a big fan of blogging. And you guys know this because you're in my world, but blogging is a long-term game. It's not like overnight, I am just making hand over fist. It is a long-term game. But the money that comes from blogging is so amazing. I like to call that money later money. And recognizing you do work with blogging up front, it's not going to pay you a ton in the beginning, but the payoff at the end is so amazing. So when you're in a situation of, I only have so much time in the day and I do need to make money, how do we balance the now money that pays us in the moment versus the later money? So I've shared this concept before, but this is really coming back to the idea of passive income. And my business coach, Greg Todd, he's currently running the Raise Your Income Challenge. And last night he was talking about the 168 vehicle. A 168 vehicle is essentially you build something that makes you money 168 hours a week, 24/7, right? And what he's talking about is building a source of passive income. So was really emphasizing like everyone needs to build a 168. And I actually believe that too. I think everyone needs to start building some type of passive income because we only have so much time in the day. So if you're like, what's passive income, Katie? I'm going to break it down for you. So I want to talk to you about active income versus passive income. Now, active income is what we were taught in school. This is trading time for money. Hourly pay for hourly work. If you get paid salary, that's how much money you get paid. If you're a freelancer, you get a contract gig, you do the work, you submit it, you get paid one and done. That is active income, and that's the now money. That is where you are trading time for money. Now money is wonderful. That's how most of you make money. That's how I made money for a long time, even when I started my side hustle. But the problem with now money and active income is that you can only scale it so far because there are only so many hours in the day. And you can make a lot of money, but if you are working so many hours, you're burnt out, you're not spending time with the people you love, you're not making the most of this one life you get to live, then my gosh, what's the point, right? So now money's important, but we want to make sure that we are creating something that's going to provide that later money, right? That money later, that passive income. So passive income is where we create something once. We create it once. We do have to have systems in place to market. What that means is we need to have systems in place to bring people into our world so that way people will actually buy the thing we made. And then what happens is that product sells on autopilot. So with passive income, you don't have to be trading time for money. I shared a couple podcast episodes about how I made $10,000 in 5 days in Vegas while I was on vacation with my daughter. And a big chunk of that was through passive income, also recurring income. And it was really through those 168 vehicles that I created these vehicles that are making money 24/7. So let me give you some examples of kind of the difference between the now money and the later money. Like what might examples of this be if you're still kind of like, okay, explain a little further, Katie. So the now money might be freelance work, freelance writing, maybe you're doing a project, maybe you're creating some videos, some recipes. It's freelance work where you're getting paid, you have a contract, you do the work, paid one and done. It could also look like maybe brand or media work where you're trading your time for money, sponsored content, maybe working with clients if you were seeing patients one-on-one or even one-to-many in a group program, or even some low-ticket offers that you might be offering, like a webinar or a master class that's paid. So that is the now money. And jobs are now money, right? That's where the work you're doing, it's going to pay you immediately. The later money is going to provide that payoff long term. That could look like creating books that you sell, ebooks, Kindle Direct Publishing, selling books on Amazon, creating digital handouts, creating courses, affiliate income where you are recommending other people's products and services. So you don't have to actually fulfill, you just have to, connect your customers to a product or service that you know would provide value. And then if you're connected with an affiliate program, you get a commission on it. But then also, if you're in my world, the world of blogging, it's ad revenue. So coming back to blogging as a business, because again, I'm doing this webinar next week. I hope to see you all there, but I'm actually going to be talking about now money versus later money on the webinar itself, because this is what I love about blogging. Blogging creates so much more later money. My blog makes thousands of dollars in passive income month after month, and I'm completely hands-off in the blog. I have an amazing dietitian who helps to run it. So it's one of those things that when I first started my blog, I really wasn't making a lot of money. In the webinar next week, blogfreebie.com, if you're watching this really at any time, you can go see it. I'm going to share all the details of how I built my blog, how long it took to make money, how I made money, where I made money from. I'm going to break it down real clear. But I remember when I first started, because I was obviously a side hustler for about 7 years. And in the beginning, I was just focused on now money, because that's all I really knew how to make was now money. And so over time, I finally realized I need to build a business for my own. And I also need to figure out ways to create that later money, create passive income. And essentially, over time, the blog started making money, but in the beginning it wasn't. So I had to make a decision. How do I balance the now money with the later money? How do I balance the money coming in so I could pay my bills with, taking the time to do the work that I know is going to pay me so much more later, and also give me a break? Because I was talking about this, somewhere this week, I was talking about the fact that there's seasons of working a lot and seasons of working a little. And I think sometimes we get in a season where we are working a lot because we have a big goal that we want to accomplish, but the goal should be we work hard to be able to step back and be like, okay, money's still coming in. I don't have to continue to grind, because we can only work hard at that high level for so long. I think of when I invested $30,000 to work with my business coach. This is when I was still working full-time at the VA. My blog business is doing good. Blogging accelerator program's doing good. Dietitian side hustle brand's doing good. And I started working hard. I stopped watching TV. I put my nose to the grindstone. I will say I did a lot of self-care. I started exercising more. I really started focusing on, okay, I have a big goal. I'm going to make this happen. Within 6 months, I left my job. That gave me an extra 40 hours a week, right? But the level that I worked those 6 months was not sustainable. I could not have done that long term, but I recognized it was a season. But the reason I was able to leave, and the reason I'm able to actually work less now, is because I've created those passive income sources. So I'm going to scroll down. I actually have my slides pulled up from the webinar, and I keep getting distracted because there's these pop-ups on my computer that I need to disable. I'm a big fan of blocking distractions on your computer, well, especially for me, because I get distracted so easily. But there's a new program on my computer that's just beep, 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 beep. Hopefully you guys can't hear it. Okay, so I have a really good example of now money versus later money. And I've actually shared a version of this on a podcast episode called Why I'm No Longer a Freelance Writer. Because again, when I first started, I was so grateful for the freelance gigs that paid me money now. It was a blessing. And I'm not poo-pooing freelance stuff. I'm a big fan of it, but I do believe we all need to start creating something that's going to create that later money, to create that passive income. So this is just going to be an example here. So I was a freelance writer. What I charged varied, but in general, for most gigs, I was making 10 cents per word. And I will tell you, it was pretty cool when you write like a sentence and you're like, I made $1 for that sentence. It was pretty cool. And I was so grateful for the gigs. I'm still grateful for them. But I want to give an example, and I'm going to share this in the webinar next week. But I wrote a blog article called Vitamin D in Older Adults. Totally up my alley, totally up my niche. Wonderful blog company that I wrote this for. And I was paid $150 to write this article. paid one and done. So that was the now money. I was trading time for money. It took me time to write the article. I was paid $150 and it was lovely because it gave me the cash flow I needed in the moment. But let's talk about that later money for the blog. So I have an example of a blog article called The Ultimate List of Cereals That Are High in Fiber. And I pulled this data at one point when I was doing the blogging as a business webinar, because I've done this webinar throughout the years. I continue to update it. And I was looking at this one blog article that was doing amazing. And this is, one of the blog articles that was at this time doing the best on my blog. I have a lot of articles, some do better than others, but this one was a really cool example. So I pulled it up at this snapshot in time, and in a 30-day window, this one article, through ad revenue alone on my blog, The Geriatric Dietitian, made $441. And this is recurring income. So this means this blog article is going to make money month after month. It's making me money right now, you guys. So I want to provide that example of when I was doing work for someone else, the now money, it paid me $150 one and done. Focusing on the later money, I could write an article for myself and it can make more than $150 month after month after month, which is why I record a whole podcast episode on why I'm no longer a freelance writer, because, I only have so much time in the day that I choose to spend in my business. And if I'm going to spend time writing, I'd rather write for my own blog because it's going to make so much more money. But in the beginning, when I first started the Geriatric Dietitian, I want to make it so clear, when I wrote an article, I was not making much money at all. It took me about 17, 18 months of blogging to start making significant money. And again, I share all those details in the blog. I was working about 5 to 7 hours a week on average, sometimes less, sometimes more. But I also pulled some more data, and I'm going to be sharing this on the webinar. But I wanted to kind of look at some of my articles that have been pulling in the most amount of money. And I just think that this is really cool. And I pulled this data on August 20th, so a couple of weeks ago. And this is just showing, I'm just going to read some of these to you. And these are some of my blog articles that make the most money. I have one article on the blog that, since ads have been on my website, which ads went live December 1st, 2020. So this is from December 1st, 2020 to August 20th, 2023. I have one article that's made $8,361. Now that's the article that's made the most money. Okay. I'm not saying every article on my website makes that much, but isn't that crazy? If I would have written the same article for another person, I would have probably made $150. So I just really want to emphasize that the now money is cool, but the later money, I really believe that we should all be working on building some type of passive income. So that way we are not always trading time for money. We can, all of the hard work we're doing can eventually pay off, and we can be like, oh, let me enjoy this time that I have. I've been talking a lot this week because, I'm an affiliate for my business coaches Raise Your Income Challenge. I'm also talking to a lot of people about the blogging as a business webinar that's coming up. So I'm just in go mode this week. So I've been having all kinds of conversations, and I actually just lost my train of thought. I feel like I was really pumped up there. Like I was probably going to say something really good. Give me 1 second. If you're new to the podcast, I don't edit. I embrace done is better than perfect on this podcast. I will say I made a commitment when I first started the podcast in 2019 that I would not edit these articles because I wouldn't edit these podcast episodes because I knew if I did, it would take me forever to get these out. And I will say a lot of you really appreciate and embrace, like, okay, if Katie can do it, I can too. So done is better than perfect. Oh golly. I know it'll come back to me later when I'm done recording. But I guess kind of what I'm trying to emphasize here is that, oh, it came back. That babbling is worth it. Okay, so I was talking about how my plan when I was working at the VA, when I was focused solely on the now money, I'm trading time for money, 40 hours a week. I get paid every 2 weeks. I have a 401k. They're matching 5%. My goal was to work at the VA until I was 68 and a half years old, retire with my pension and my 401k that they call a TSP in the federal government. And that was my goal and my plan. And what I was doing was, I was limited on the amount of vacations I could take. I was limited on the amount of sick leave I have. And when you have children, they get sick. And so I just felt like my life was so limited based on my job because I had to be there 40 hours a week. I only had so much vacation. A lot of people only have 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. If you're super lucky, maybe 4 weeks of vacation a year. And so I felt like my whole goal was like, I'm working so hard to be able to retire and, live my best life when I'm 68 and a half. I just turned 40. So that's still a ways away, right? And ever since I left my job at the VA, I've been telling people it doesn't feel like I'm working because I've been able to build a business entirely based around what I love. And I've also built a business based around passive income because at a season when I was working full time, had my side hustle, super busy, I was so focused on building that later money. And now it's later. And so I'm really getting the benefits of having that passive income and having time freedom. And the fact that I was able to leave my job at the VA and I don't have to be somewhere 40 hours a week. I've built a business entirely based around what I love doing, helping the public through blogging, building up other dietitians. I was telling someone what I did recently. I'm like a cheerleader for dietitians. I get paid to build up dietitians and help them achieve their big goals. Best job ever. So I just think of how grateful I am that I get to enjoy the time with my kids when they're still in the home. I get to drive them to school, pick them up from school. I get to, go on vacations with my kids. I don't have to stress and worry about taking time off, asking permission. Can I take leave during this time? Or is someone else taking leave? So I got to stay in the office. It's just so much freedom and such a blessing. So I hope this conversation makes sense, even with my little bit of babbling here and there. But really the goal is we want to focus on the now money because I understand you got to pay your bills. But I think each and every one of you need to be focused on the later money. What are you building that is going to make you money 24/7? To where you don't always have to exclusively trade time for money. Don't work hard until you're 68 and a half, then retire and be like, okay, what can we do now to create these systems that we can back off and work less sooner than later? And that doesn't have to look like leaving your job, because I know some of you are like, Katie, I'm a side hustler, but being a full-time entrepreneur sounds stressful. But maybe your goal is you want to go part-time in your job. There's lots of different goals that you might have. So I'm going to be talking again next week on the webinar, Blogging as a Business, all about how you can build a business based on blogging and how you can use it to create that later money. So that way you could have more time and financial freedom. I have some really ambitious goals for this webinar. I want to get 1,200 people on the webinar. And I want healthcare professionals, of course, dietitians, but if you have any friends, dietitians, any other healthcare professionals, PTs, OTs, chiropractors, nurses, doctors, dental hygienists, any other healthcare professionals, I would love it if you were to invite them to the webinar, blogfreebie.com. I want to see more healthcare professionals out there who are sharing correct evidence-based information to the public, but then also are building streams of passive income so that way they could build a dream life themselves. So I hope this episode was helpful. I just got my daughter off to school. I'm going to be waking my son up in a little bit to go to school, and I'm like, podcast episode in between. So that's what I'm going to be doing right now, is getting my son to school. So I hope that you guys have the most amazing day. I hope to see so many of you on the webinar next week, and we'll chat soon. Bye, guys.